Wake up and deliver!
Oh,
Episode
wow.
7, Season 2. Mic check 1, 2, 3. John, good morning.
Good morning. And yeah, you got that mic working now. You were like far away and we could still hear you and everything.
Now, no matter where I am, we're live. Good morning, everybody, to another Wake Up and Deliver Season 2, Episode 7 with John and myself, Matthew. I guess we never introduce ourselves because...
Well, everyone knows. We're like famous.
Obviously.
Yeah, obviously.
We're going to start off with some John reactions, brain food, coffee, whatever Matt calls it and thinks it's interesting. Ready for this, John?
Yeah, I'm always ready.
I need a deadpan. This is what makes it great.
Okay.
Once something is obvious and working, people tend to underestimate it.
Well, okay. I have a mixed bag on that one. A mixed
Really?
bag. Yeah. Only because I think it's probably true, right? Like I think like anything, right? Like our brains will go on autopilot and we stop thinking about things like, oh, it's just working and it's not there. But honestly, more as an extension, I think that's so often like where opportunity lies for people because they get something working or it's working good enough or it was causing them a lot of grief and they got it working to an acceptable level. And then they stop trying to push to make it better or to tweak it or to make it really right. So that's why I said I'm torn because I don't necessarily find that one as motivational as some of the other ones. If anything, it's like, this is what's holding you back sometimes, my man.
I had a fan write a message in, and they said, this is a better quote, "A smooth supply chain is like oxygen. Nobody thanks you for it until it's gone."
Oh, now see that one is just deadpan. That one, like the fan for sure. Like, I give 100% credit there. It is very true though. I think that people don't appreciate enough the fact that like logistics, supply chain, general operations, again, no one even thinks anything of it, but everybody became an expert when toilet paper was not on the shelf. You know what I mean?
Yeah, it's so easy. Like toilet paper is so easy to make. Like it doesn't take much. And I think we used our pencil example one time. But not to digress too much, we're gonna keep going. I shared this video with you yesterday. I don't think I'm gonna play the whole thing. One. No sound, but I thought this was an interesting take. I'll let the video kind of play as we chat. I thought this was an interesting take because I think he's spot on. I think everybody's racing for these autonomous trucks, but we've had that for forever in the form of trains. And this is what this gentleman, Chase, goes on and says, hey, listen, guys, we've had autonomous vehicles for the longest time. Like it's quite efficient. It's quite the place. It goes to a yard where it has to be broken down, separated, then taken to the final mile. Everything that you guys are describing in an autonomous vehicle, you got to train. Like, why are we trying to reinvent it? Like, this is super efficient. That's my point.
Are you waiting for a take now?
Yeah.
Okay.
Honestly.
I don't. I think it is interesting because I mentioned to you too that right. Britton and Ladd had shared like a similar concept of around this concept of like, well, why if you're going to do something autonomous, right? Why do you need these autonomous trucks? And really kind of calling out traditional like commercial vehicles that are just being made autonomous because like if you don't need the driver, why are you still using that design? This one's a little bit interesting because I agree in the sense that you're right. Like there is the capability to move large amounts of product. More or less autonomously, right? I think he's right. Like these guys, like a handful of people that move so much product. And what Matt didn't share, which was part of the interesting take, is that he said rather than building out like rather than continuing to invest in like autonomous trucks, he's like, why would you not just continue to build out your rail infrastructure? Which I think is a key concept there because obviously someone's probably thinking like, well, there aren't tracks everywhere. But I do think that we could definitely do a solid 80-20 of getting like the lanes and the corridors that carry 80% of the value beefed up with their infrastructure to be able to do more of this. I think that that's definitely very interesting as a concept because I always find it interesting that people are like the autonomous stuff, especially, and it's funny because I write a lot about drones. I have drones and delivery and all of these things, but like, let's be real. If you're on the sustainable side, no, but if you're on the sustainable side, like save the planet, the fact of wanting to build millions and billions of little robots with rare earth elements and batteries and toss
Not the
them
way.
break, like these two things, like this is a bad marriage. Like this is not a good, like this is not going to end well. You know what I mean? It's like, oh, let's just take all of this like mass production that we see is killing the planet in fast fashion, and let's just move it to vehicles and like little robots. Like we're gonna trade landfills of clothes for like landfills of like iRobots, like
Yeah.
just everywhere. And I that's why I'm always shook by like this race to overly productize robotics because it's like how many of those little broken stupid jumping dog things are you gonna see in landfills in 15 years? You know what I mean?
Yeah, because they're not biodegradable.
No, they're not. And the reality is, like, unfortunately, our society has already shown the fact that we get ourselves to a point where it's cheaper, more cost effective, and more efficient to just build new rather than to have all of the infrastructure to tear down, repair, recycle. Like, you know what I mean? Like, imagine you have to go to court these days to stop a company from Apple to actually let you repair your phone that allegedly
Yeah.
is worth, $1,500, $2,000 or whatever. It's like, no, it's just cheaper to get a new one on a new contract like every year. You know what I mean?
Yeah. The longevity of product is not there, right? And it's been proven time and time again. Like there's certain products that are made with this built in. But going back, I'm going to take a step back because you made a great point earlier. I wanted to kind of talk about because you went off on your John moment there. Very.
I shared some deep insights. You're welcome. Yeah.
What I was going to say is it's funny how this autonomous conversation is very prevalent. And I always make this conversation here in North America. It's less prevalent in Europe because they have such more dependency on rail and ocean and river barges. Because if you don't know, Europe uses a lot of, because they build a lot of canals through obviously the Middle Ages and everything as a way of transportation because it's a lot easier. And they transport a lot still in those manners. There's not as much going, hey, we need autonomous vehicles. It's because they have the rail all working throughout the whole system. They have those large barges. They're talking more, how do we build more canals? How do we connect the Black Sea to the Danube and then have more stuff going to the north? Like, how do we connect Asia through canals within Europe as a way to kind of make it more efficient? Because ocean freight in big giant ships per cost of CO2, I believe, is one of the most green-friendly way of transporting. Because obviously the number of product that you have. And then when you start making those more green, the ships, that is the best way to transport. A single load on a single truck is very inefficient. And then if you go down to like the parcel level, when you're talking about the drones, it becomes super not green friendly. Obviously, everything has to be in bulk, especially when you go delivering to specific people's houses. The more you have it as a collective area of collecting product, and less that you have to transport to individual houses, the more green it is. And
yeah, exactly. I think I've told you this before, but I still remember one time someone was complaining about the fact that their package flew from like it was bouncing around like sort of South America and things like this, and it was like, look at how wasteful this company is by flying my package back and forth. Like, why couldn't they have just done it in a more green way? It's like, Karen, they did it that way because you asked for 1-day shipping, and that was the only way that was going to happen with like meeting all of those lanes. It's like, if you want to contribute to going green, give them 7 days to deliver it and watch how efficient it'll probably become.
But that's a fallacy in itself, though, because you used to have 7-day shipping and it wasn't green.
No, but I think that I think these days, that's an interesting point. No, but it's an interesting point in the sense that true, but also now out of context, because the
Yes.
thing is, the biggest difference is the fact that volume, demand, like, the number of people transacting in that way has taken off. Like, you
Yeah.
know what I mean? So you have so many more options, and because of the fact that you have people that really understand the system differently, you can actually make these value propositions. Because for the longest time, building ecom was just about like, oh my god, they said yes, and it was like trying to rush to execute it. You know what I mean? Like, quick, get it done before they change their mind. Like, you know what I mean? That's not the reality anymore. Like, I mean,
It's evolved. Obviously, it has
big
evolved.
time.
There's a lot more density. There's a lot more. People understand it more, right? They've learned a little bit more about how logistics works. Where I've said this before, logistics wasn't sexy 10 years ago. It's sexier now. People are like, oh, you do logistics? Well, that's cool. I know what that is. Like before, you'd be like, I do logistics. You're like, what do you mean? Like, what do you mean?
I was at a comedy club a few weeks ago, and I made the mistake of just kind of trying to. I did sit in the front row actually, and the guy was kind of cutting us up, and he was making this joke about like, oh, who had to work today, and I was like, oh, I put up my hand, and he was making a joke about like, oh, it's like, oh, you're a drug dealer. I'm like, no, I'm not a drug, Jesus. And he goes, so what do you do then? And I'm like, I'm in logistics. He goes, well, what does that mean? I'm like, oh, I move boxes, because like that was like the oversimplified thing, and then he unfortunately was able to run with that for the rest of the night. So yeah.
Yeah, that makes sense. But actually, I had a cool spin. I know you had something that you wanted to chat about, but I'm going to take over and bring in a different perspective, because we always talk about logistics in the terms of package moving product, consumers, and all this. But I wanted to put a different spin on the logistics, and this is where Canadians are great at. And I'm going to see if you can guess it. What would your top 3 logistical moves that Canadian are great at would be your guess?
Like just straight up in general?
Yeah.
Our energy, like actually like the logistics of oil and gas, like, you know what I mean? Considering it's, pipelines and stuff like that. I think the logistics of, and then as an extension of that, even the logistics of some of the energy moves around water and dams and stuff like that would be another one. And then I do think like food in general, like agriculture, moving food around. So.
Great ones. None of the ones I was going to go with. In light of the polar vortex that is wreaking havoc in the last 2 weeks on our North American landscape, I shall bring you the logistics of snow removal in the most efficient city of snow removals in Canada, being Montreal.
Oh, okay. Because I was going to say for a sec, just a quick pause. So, for people who don't know, so I'm originally from Ottawa. Okay, I'm back in Ottawa now, but I was living in Toronto area, GTA, for 10 years. Matt's outside of the GTA, so just so you know, there's no Canadian on the planet that would actually think that the logistics and quality of snow removal is a number one thing in Toronto. So that's my defense as to why I'm like, this would not be top of mind, because honestly, I don't know if you could get much worse than what Toronto does. Like, they kind of like are always like, I don't think we need to do it today. It's like, guys, it's brutal out there. They're like, no, we're going to be fine. And like accidents all over the place. But anyways, I'm glad to see it's not Toronto.
It is in Toronto. Montreal, and I've been, because, people think of logistics, like I talk about just moving packages. This is very much a logistical endeavor. Mm-hmm. And I forget the statistic that it was like 1,500 snow removal trucks in Montreal, and they make those roads run. In contrast, Toronto is still trying to figure out how to remove the snow from last week, and they got hit again this weekend. Not to pick on Toronto, but Montreal does a great job. And this is one thing I was thinking about, is because obviously this polar vortex is hitting other cities and they're having issues. Do you think it's possible to be an export from Montreal? Be like, hey, we're so good at this, we should be exporting this strategy to other cities and
well, I mean, like definitely kind of like the military does with stuff like training, right? Like bring people in, be like, yo, come train in like a real market and stuff. Because to people's point, like there's a few things like, and why we're saying it's logistics, because someone could be like, oh, you're just driving trucks down the road, but like realistically, in a lot of the cities, the biggest challenge isn't just that you're taking the snow and you're like pushing it to the side. It's the fact that you're actually like picking up you're moving the snow, but then it's actually getting collected. It's being put onto like a dump truck. So they have like actually a really good flow to what's going on. And then these dump trucks are taking them and they're moving to other locations, which also means that you have to quasi understand the capacity of like these yards that you're dumping snow in and stuff. Yeah.
They even melt it. They even do commercial stuff with the snow. They don't just like dump it somewhere and like it's someone else's problem. They have a good whole recycling process with it as well. But they're loading dump trucks and they do this on the highways. They don't just leave snow piled up on the road, even though the Montreal highways could use it a little bit of improvement. There's snow.
Yeah, the only problem, Montreal's been improving their highways for about 30 years.
But look, this is super. Look, the trucks are all lined up. This takes logistics. The planning behind this is phenomenal, and I think because of the snow removal that everybody is trying to do right now, this is a great little take on Canadian logistics that most people don't think about because we just live with it. And as Americans, hopefully a lot of Americans are watching this and they're going, well, why can't we do it? You can do
actually. You know what's funny? In all honesty, it's a good metaphor for like even sales and e-commerce in general. Because the other thing with this that why it's a big logistical feat is because there's a very big element of planning and triage and prioritization, because even though they have a lot of trucks, they most certainly don't have enough trucks to do like every street all at the same time. So that means I have to understand what day of week is it? What is my typical traffic pattern? Where are people happening to be going? What are the streets I need to really do first? And should I even do some of those ones first? Because here's this storm that's going on right now. I spent an hour and a half outside yesterday shoveling and stuff like that. And by the time I came back from dinner, it's like, well, I could have just done it again. You know what I mean? So it's like, you got to also balance off what's like, well, I don't have the resources to do it twice. This is an important artery / laneway. Do I have to do it later? Do I have to manage? So there's a ton that goes on in terms of really trying to understand. Because I think too many people default to trying to do everything all at the same time, all at once, and like brute forcing problems to try to make them opportunities, and you end up just making it a hot mess.
And not only that, they also do roads and the sidewalks and make it like for pedestrians safe. And that priority, and I'm glad you touched upon that, because there was an experiment years ago in Sweden where a lot of the Swedes were like, well, a lot of Swedes walk. Why aren't the sidewalks done first? And they ran an experiment during one season where they did the sidewalks first, and it created such a backlog in the whole system because the cars weren't able to maneuver, right? As a person walking in the snow, you can still kind of get through. So it's inconvenient, but not as dangerous as cars. So that priority list of what roads you have to do first and what areas is very much on point. And then go back to your analogy, same as planning and logistics. Like, where you deliver your product. If there's a backlog right now and you got a whole bunch of loads that sat over the weekend because of the snowfall, there is a process to get out of it. You don't go, first in, first out. Which customers have to leave now? Which product has to get there? Which product can, by extension, be held back is very important. Conversing with your customers on that topic, very important. Obviously, you do perishable first, and then other products, life-saving products, pharma, all that takes priority. But you can realizing what's within your network, not going, hey, this one's from Thursday, it has to go first. Well, today's product might be more important because of an expiry factor that you got to take into consideration. That's why the logistics of it sometimes is far more, to me, interesting than just removing snow.
Okay, so this is super perfect, because now I'm gonna wrestle back some control, and I'm gonna and I'm gonna go on to my rant, because I think it actually, oddly enough, fits funny
I knew it.
Yeah. We're like that. We're synced up, guys. That's I don't even want to know what season 3 and 4 is going to be like. We probably won't even have to talk. We're just going to be in each other's head. Anyways.
Just subtitles.
So, okay. When you think about then the concept of like understanding your priority, where you want to sell, how you want to execute, like, I talk a lot about, your execution and quality of, and the customer experience and how it's directly tied into it. So as an example, and this is going to seem really silly, but it is like a pretty apt kind of example for a lot of this stuff. So I have this
Already.
Manuka honey, okay, in
Ooh,
the cupboard. Yeah, see, exactly.
Manuka.
Exactly. Everybody knows Manuka honey isn't exactly your value choice. It's a higher quality product. It's typically more expensive. So
It's very bougie.
it is bougie. I know. Anyway, so okay, you're right. Yeah, it's a little bit bougie, but yeah. So it's expensive. And here's the other thing, that if you consume quality honey, you'll also know that the higher the quality of the honey, the more it's going to crystallize, right? Like, especially as you start using it and it mixes a little bit with air, like it's going to start to crystallize more, which means it gets like even tackier and like, more solid and whatever. So
Viscous. I think the word's viscous.
less viscous, more viscous, it would just be, it would be like water.
Oh, less viscous.
Yeah, less viscous.
Molasses. More molasses.
More, yeah, more like molasses. Yeah. So funny enough, though, if you want to talk about bougie, I have two other honeys in there. One's a cinnamon one, and then the other one's a pumpkin spice one. Those are very bougie. But anyways,
I got chocolate and blueberry, so I like honey.
there you go. See, look at this, guys. You're just learning all about Matt and I this morning and how you can win our hearts. Anyways, so this thing is almost done, but it's been a pain in the ass for like most of its life, because for whatever reason, despite the fact that this manufacturer went with a high quality honey that everybody knows, and they tried to make it a good presentation, they assumed that like a squeeze bottle would be the right option for this. And on top of it, it's like one of those like Heinz ones where it's supposed to be like the extra good squeeze where like there's no drip, no leak. Yeah. So anyways, like, you need some real grip strength at this point. Sometimes you're even like two-handing this thing to get it off. Yeah. But like nothing about this actually then is in line with the quality of the product, right? It's like you're completely destroying your customer experience by having the wrong packaging, by kind of allowing it to be experienced in the wrong way. And honestly, I'm never going to buy that brand again. So even though it's like a high quality honey and it could have all kinds of great benefits, that squeeze is way too annoying, and I'm going to look for someone else's brand. And honestly, the only real reason that was done, that I can see anyway, is that it's cheaper to make. Straight up, like that packaging in a plastic squeeze bottle, as opposed to what most of them do in like, like glass jars and stuff like that. Plastic is typically faster on the production line. It's cheaper to actually have the raw materials of the container or whatever. So they prioritize like their own ability to maybe store and move the product right in these containers, and then the cost of manufacturing it over the product experience. And honestly, like, even though it's a high quality product, they're damaging their brand by that choice. So my point with that is just like showing that, if you don't really understand your customers, if you don't understand the experience, if you're not, prioritizing the right types of things, right? Like we've been talking about with these different like sort of logistics setups, you're not going to win anyway. Like you're not going to be any further ahead.
When did it in I guess the Western culture, did it change that how something is packaged creates the value of the product? Because call it like 20, 30 years ago, I don't think anybody it was wrapped in a newspaper, but the product was great. It made no difference. Nowadays, it has to be part of that unwrapping experience, that it has to be quality.
Well, but this is funny though, because there's like a mixed bag. So I bought these ridiculous glasses. Okay, hold on. Actually, I'm gonna get them.
You're gonna get them. He's gonna get them. Hopefully, he's not too long. Oh no,
okay.
He's quick. You can hear
I'm
him.
back. I'm back.
Well, are these the blue glasses that you've been telling me about for a few weeks?
Well, no, I just bought them the other day. But the funny thing was, I was watching Tulsa King and I saw Sylvester Stallone with them, and I'm like, oh, I wonder what these are like. And then I found out Robert Downey Jr. wears them too, so I'm like, oh, I'm gonna check these things out and see what they're about.
Two of his heroes.
They're hero, yeah. I mean, might as well. Like, let's go. But anyway, so point being though, these glasses, okay, the level of packaging that they came in was was actually insane for the fact that they weren't very expensive. Like, it was a really strong cardboard box. Inside the box, it had its own case. It had multiple kind of like lens cleaners for it, like way over packaged. And, bringing up the cost of these. Now, I can only assume that's because the glasses themselves are just dirt cheap. But to your point, as manufacturing has gone up and volume has gone up, the cost of packaging, or the way that packaging is being done, is this balance between how quickly can I hit the quality perception and trigger these ideas of transference from someone, while also lowering my cost. Like, when I was in the food industry, I remember sitting around a table and having a discussion, about screw caps on cartons that you'll see on orange juice and some milks and stuff like that. Literally, that thing costs 1 cent, like a little over 1 cent. And it was a whole discussion about what products to put it on versus others, because it's like, ooh, that's gonna be a little too costly on that product. It's like, it's literally 1 cent in its own like microcosm of analysis. Everyone's gonna be like, who cares about the penny? But it's like, no, when it's tens of millions of units, it's like, no, it adds up. And unless it's gonna drive sales, what's the point?
Yes. And we're seeing more and more of that, right? Like, water is another great example where people are now moving away from the bottled water in plastic, and then they're moving into the carton of water, or the aluminum cans, and that's more bougie water. That's the word of the day. Bougie logistics.
Yeah.
But it also creates other problems that people are like, oh, why can't you just move it over to, like you said, to like this type of product, for it's a lot more eco-friendly. What people forget is the crush, like the plastic is such a great product for durability. There's less OS&D. So go back to your honey example. Glass is fantastic. I love honey in glass because it just makes the most sense.
Yeah.
But glass breaks.
Yeah, for sure.
And
it's heavier. It's more costly. Yeah.
And plastic is a lot, like you said, easier to manufacture, a lot less breakage, a lot less cleanup, a lot different aspects of it, and it's more costly. It really depends on the product. And so when you have all these cool products that you're starting to come up with, it's not just the cost of that product might increase it, it's how you transport it might increase as well.
Exactly.
Right? So I can package plastic a lot more into a full trailer, and it's called in a 45,000 pound dry van. I can have a hell of a lot more honey in it than if I had glass bottles in it. And that cost per case, therefore, is down. So my profitability, so those pennies like you're talking about, make a big difference. And those simple decisions, because over the course of, call it a full trailer of these plastic cups, you might be 1 unit less of what you can ship. And over time, you're shipping less volume. And that's where you obviously want to maximize. That's why, like, the Bulk Barn in Canada, they don't have Bulk Barn in the US, and they always find it very fat. Yeah, it's a very.
I thought they must have something. It's basically you buy stuff in bulk with no packaging.
Yeah, and that's a very unique way of and it's very successful. People come in and they scoop in and they do it. But it's
very successful because everyone sees the small price and they're like, oh, what a great deal, and they scoop a huge amount and they get to the cash and then they feel embarrassed.
$30.
Oh, I didn't mean to buy $95 of chocolate chips, but I guess I'm here now.
Santa bag walking out.
Anyways, that's random. And no, I mean, I'm not speaking from personal experience, but anyways.
But then when you're shipping the Bulk Barn, it comes in giant bins, and then you can ship more volume of it. But the price turns out, like I had an argument with a friend about this, because when you go to the dollar store, because I love Reese's Pieces, and I go to Bulk Barn and buy my Reese's Pieces, and they're like, why don't you just go to the dollar store? It's cheaper. I'm like, it can't be cheaper. I'm saving so much by buying in bulk, but because they've made it so efficient shipping it in the packaging that they have and how they can stack it, and the Bulk Barn's margins based off that extra ability of, like you just said, it's all in that whole process. Long story short, the packaging does make a difference on the experience and the margins of it and how you perceive the product as well, right? Mm-hmm. And that's been proven time and again. Where I think it was in New York, they were just even food consumption. They did a ramen restaurant based off of instant ramen noodles, but made it look bougie and charged an upcharge. And made it like
and everyone loved it.
And everybody loved it. Like, this is the best ramen I ever tasted. But it was like $1 ramen that they spoiled in the microwaves.
Oh yeah, and there's a really famous example of like I think it's a vodka company or something like that, where like their sales were tanking and stuff like that, and they literally changed nothing other than the bottle and how it looked, and then everyone started being like, oh, this is the best, this is so
Yeah.
good, and they ended up like dramatically increasing their profitability. And that's like that is the concept of transference, which is why I always tell people like your operational experience, like how you execute it directly these days, speaks to what people perceive of your brand and stuff like that. Like it's going to be extremely difficult to say like, "Ooh, look at my beautiful honey and it's so good and it's got the best benefits for you," when like everything then about that execution or like the experience falls off, because like all of those negative things transfer. It's kind of like if you had a bad delivery person, they're throwing stuff at your door and like whatever, like you're not necessarily going to blame like Dave the delivery driver. You're going to be like, you're going to go blame like Lulu or whatever who hired Dave, because you're like, no, that's your expectation, so that's what your brand is about. You know what I mean?
Yeah, and then I'll give you a great example just from personal experience. We had a customer that came on board, and they wanted direct to store deliveries, and their biggest pain point was PODs. They're like, we can't get PODs. This is such a huge pain point for us. I can't stand it. They're going insane. They're like, we're losing and everything. We're like, no problem. We'll take care of it. We came up with a system. Took a while. We built the whole interaction for them. And, even before we started, they're like, how do we get these PODs, guys? Like, this is very important. We went through week one. We kind of were working out the jitters. Like, hey, where are the PODs? We sent them the PODs. They're like, oh, okay, this is nice. The next week, we turned on instant PODs for them. Part of that experience. The guy calls me up. He's like, listen, we get it. Please just send us a summary. You guys got all the PODs. You got everything. We want it. We get it. You got it. You got this covered. No longer a pain point. We're never talking about it again. Please stop the emails. Just send me a summary. But it speaks volumes to it, right? Because you enhance that process for them. You enhance that what their pain points are. You completely eliminate it. Your brand then becomes so much more valuable to them. Where they've had big, huge brands working for them. Not to say that we're not big and huge.
Well, you are huge. I mean, you're massive, guys. If you're looking to get your transportation done and you want to work with a massive company, I mean, you get with Monarch, because they've got a little bit of room left, because the 10,000 other customers take a lot, but
That's right. And you can on John's screen, great.
Get our
QR code.
There you. Oh wait, wrong hand. This one. Okay.
But that's part of the experience, right? And once you kind of eliminate that, you get that brand loyalty, and then they want to be with you for a long time, and they will talk about how they solve that problem to other people. And we've talked about this many times. It's not about just delivering from point A to point B. It's the experience that you do. And one thing that our team does, and Kat's listening, so she better plug her ears, is being very specific on like little things like I'm like, oh, it's not a big deal. No, it's a very big deal. How they get their PODs. It's not. I don't want to see the person's hands in the POD. I don't want to see their. I want it very clear, very concise. It has to be there. It enhances the experience for the customer.
Yeah.
And for me, it's like as an operations guy, I'm like, I got the POD, push it through. Just don't worry about it. For them, it's like the little details do matter because their experience is so much better, right?
Oh, I agree. And I mean, like the details, the devil is like always in the details and those smaller things. And even the interesting thing now, like for you, is that even though that client, now you built this like really robust system for that client that's like, okay, actually, you know what, we don't need those PODs that way. Okay, perfect. I'm gonna switch my fork, like my decision tree, instead of going to the customer, it's gonna go to my own system, which means though that anytime they ask for a question, you're like, yeah, no problem. Let me bring that up. Boom, there you go. Because that's really what logistics and operations is about. Like, as much as people like to talk about SLAs and they talk about all of these things, like, let's be real. There's not one shipper on the planet that doesn't expect 100% SLA, regardless of like what they accept. Like, that's the real expectation. So logistics and operations is really at its core about how well you manage exceptions, right? Because nobody cares about the green. They expect everything to be green. So it's like, like I always sorry, I know we're over time. This is my last thing. There's so many of these providers out there that are like, oh yeah, we give a portal so that our customers can go in and just check everything that was delivered or everything that was shipped. And it's like, I can tell you, I have never once, either myself or even when I had a big management team, ever asked the managers or the supervisors or anyone to be like, hey, Tim, can you go check all of the stuff that is confirmed delivered and just make sure it was all just done, that all of those transactions were like never asked. What gets attention though is, hey, we've got this complaint, we've got this problem, this thing seems delayed and whatever. And that's what people don't understand, is that like there's no value in your proposition of essentially doing your job. Like that's the expectation. As hard as it is, I'm not saying it's easy. Unfortunately, that's just like to your point, like the thankless world of logistics, in the sense of like people just expect these things to be going on.
And just to that point, I had this conversation with one of our partners recently, and they're like, "Oh, you know, shit happens. The XYZ happened to the driver. He wasn't able to make it." I'm like, "Hey, the point is not that he could not make it, because the shit does happen. Like everybody understands that things happen.
Yeah,
it's when you know after the fact that makes the big difference.
Exactly.
If you know after the fact, any credibility that you had gets restarted to zero. If you have a conversation up front before the action happens that is going to create that late or that disturbance to the production, it softens, doesn't take it away, it softens the blow, and your credibility is still held. But if the expectation is a 8 a.m. delivery, and you find out at 8:30 the guy's not there, by the customer calling you, going, "Hey, where's the driver?" your credibility has now been eroded, and you have to restart that whole way. And as the famous saying is, you're only as good as your last delivery.
Yeah. And if you're a younger company out there, and you want to make it worse for yourself, be surprised by that phone call and be like, "What do you mean he's not there?" Because
then what?
He promised me he would be there.
That's my line. I use that this week. I'm like, what do you mean? I talked to him. He said he's gonna be there.
Yeah. On the flip side, though, there's almost nothing better than when you are ahead of it. Sometimes still get the call and be like, "No, I've already checked. He's actually in the yard. They've told him to wait. We're all good." I would have let you know. I would have let you know if there was something more than what I had already sent.
Here's the GPS. He's already in the door, guys.
Yeah, I've got his body cam. He's on the dock. Here's a still.
Here's the conversation with you 10 minutes ago. What are you talking about?
I know, you know what? We're kind of joking, but there's reasons why we kind of think that's funny. Is because they do kind of happen, especially when you're dealing with bigger organizations with different levels and different people. Sometimes, especially when there's like a complaint, it could like level jump or whatever. So it's like, you might be working with like a supervisor or a manager as part of the day-to-day flow. And then all of a sudden, like a manager or director gets a call, and everyone loves to be a hero. So, it just... Anyways, we're like super over time, but that was a great show. We got some nice comments, Nancy especially. So thank you, Nancy, for contributing and the comments. We had a good time. Like, and see, sometimes like everyone it's like you get a wild package of like entertainment, knowledge, updates on the market. It's just basically every reason to keep tuning in week after week.
Why go anywhere else? It's the same loading time, same loading dock.
Yeah.
Same appointment time. We're always here. We're better than Walmart. We're right
exactly.
Here.
Always on time. Done it from the car, from airports, from highways, everything.
100%. And when we can't be here, we have replacements to make it still entertaining.
So what you're saying, if I hear you right, is that he can't get... Well, we always work to make it better, but right now, guys, we're up here.
This is peak. Anyways, on that note, thank you everybody for joining us. We had lots of fun. Oh, on this holiday in Canada and the U.S. President's Day. Everywhere but Quebec is a holiday today. Because they have to.
Hence why they're out moving snow.
On that note, we'll say goodbye to everybody, and then we'll catch you next week. Bye.